Welcome to Chuck's Guitar Geekery. Today's video kind of morphed from one concept I'd started with and now has expanded into a much longer video than I anticipated. I was just trying to make a quick YouTube short comparing this amp and this amp. Newer Peavey Transtube, older Peavey before the Transtube. 25 watts, 20 watts. 8-inch speaker, 12-inch speaker. Early 2000s, 1980s. How different are they? How much has Peavey progressed with the Transtube? And does it really make it more, quote, tube-like? So, running through a couple different tests here. I'm going to start with the amps mic'd with a Sennheiser E609 and run them both in a mix and then run them without a mix. So what they sound like in isolation versus what they sound like with other instruments. But then I also have this fancy combo amp extender here from Eric Mero Effects. I've done videos on that before. I'll have a link to that. But essentially what that does is you can turn any small combo amp like this essentially into a guitar head. So it takes the speaker in the box, it's in out of the equation, it's just the amp. Then I have them both going through the same load box. And let's just dive into the sound test and I'll come back and talk a little more after the fact. Sorry, I felt like challenging myself with the backing track this week, which the backing track is a DistroKid Trio Plus, so this is honestly a chord progression riff from the last time I was in an original band, probably 20 years ago at this point. We had made a song about that, and we called it 7/4 because time signatures on 7/4. The differences between the two, I thought in the mix, the Transtube kind of got lost, I think. It didn't quite have the cut that the older one did. The older one has a lot more mid-range, but the gain characteristics between the two, because the newer one obviously has a lot more gain because once we got through the 90s and the 2000s, people wanted more gain. So there's more gain in the Transtube era versus the pre-Transtube era. For Transtube, and Peavey has what they call saturation instead of gain for their distortion in these. To me, it almost sounds more like a fuzz box going into an amp as opposed to an amp distorting. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying that's good. It's just different. It's not quite going to sound like just plugging straight into an amp. But it is a very cool sound that I think, at least with that backing track I was doing, it kind of fit the vibe of that one, I think. Transtube, I didn't notice it so much when I was miking it, but going through the impulse responses and you're hearing just the amp, there's kind of like a weird buzzing, like on the fade out when you let a note sustain. It kind of got like a real fizzy decay that I didn't really like. I don't know if I'm going to use this for those purposes now, because I thought about using this for like pedal and guitar demos, going through the impulse responses, but I'm not so sure now. I might stick to the katana. But anyways, what do you think? Has Peavey gotten better with age? Or did they get it right initially? I don't know. Let your ears be the judge. And my stance on anything solid state Peavey, which I'm a little too obsessed with. There's one hiding behind me too. And another one down here, that's a KB100 that I use for bass. But any Peavey amp you could find for $100 or less, I think you can't go wrong with. I can't speak on the Viper and the digital modeling series because I haven't played one, so I can't speak to those. But any typical solid state Peavey, whether it's this big or this big, if you can get it for 100 or less, go for it. They rarely break down. They last forever. They can get loud. The 65 watt Banjo 65 is the loudest one out of this whole wall, and I'm not exactly sure why. I think it just has the most headroom, but like, subscribe. This was just a for fun bonus video this week. So anyways, see you later.